You can have a look for yourself. Imagine you could click open the top of your head and lift your brain out. It weighs about 3 pounds. Some compare it to half of an enormous walnut. But if you can't visualize a 3-pound walnut half, think of a bicycle helmet. Bicycle helmets look the way they do so they can surround the brain. Think of your brain as a big cap perched on a stalk and protected by the neck flap. The big cap is your cerebral cortex. The stalk is your brainstem, which plugs into your spinal cord. The brainstem keeps many of your automatic functions going, like your breathing and heartbeat. The neck flap covers your cerebellum, which coordinates movement. Without your cerebellum, you couldn't walk upright, touch your finger to your nose, or turn this page. Without your brainstem, you couldn't breathe. Without your cerebral cortex, you wouldn't be human. The cortex is where you think, remember, learn, imagine, read, speak, listen, and dream. In the cortex, you feel your emotions and you make sense of what your senses are telling you. The cortex is where you actually see what your eyes transmit, smell what your nose senses, taste what your tongue samples, touch what your nerves report, and hear what your ears pick up. None of this vital activity is visible in gross anatomy. By just holding a brain in your hands, you and the doctors of Phineas's day can't see the thing that makes this organ work, the brain's fundamental unit, which is the brain cell or neuron. You'll need a microscope and a lot of skill to see a single neuron. But all of these structures, the cortex, cerebellum, brainstem, and spinal cord, are made up of neurons specialized to relay and transmit tiny electrical impulses. By layering and connecting billions of neurons, you get a brain. So there's the left hemisphere, the inner hemispheric fissure, and the right hemisphere. There's the corpus callosum, the left hemisphere, the right hemisphere, so the left and right sides. It says here you can see the division between the two hemispheres of the cortex. The crack between them is called the interhemispheric fissure. The two hemispheres specialize in different mental skills, but brain functions are not as neatly divided as they appear. Phineas's tamping iron struck the left hemisphere first, but also grazed the right hemisphere on the way out. He lost something from both hemispheres. But by looking at your brain in your hand, you'll notice that the cortex splits in half right down the middle. The left hemisphere and right hemisphere are separated by a deep crack, the interhemispheric fissure, but joined in the middle of the brain by a thick mat of nerves, the corpus callosum. The corpus, which is the switchboard for signals back and forth between the two halves. In recent times, scientists have learned that the two hemispheres specialize in certain skills. Sometimes you'll hear researchers talk about a right brain or left brain skill. They really mean right or left hemisphere, but you can't see any skills by looking at the outside of the brain. Indeed, if you're looking at your brain from the outside, you might wonder if you're holding the cortex backwards. The front of the cortex seems to be hanging out in space until you realize that your face fits in the space underneath. The part of the cortex above your face is the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is the part that concerns us most regarding Phineas. But you should know the other lobes, the parietal lobe on the top and the occipital lobe at the back of your head, right above your cerebellum. Wrapping around your temples on the side of your head are the temporal lobes. Each hemisphere has its own frontal, parietal, occipital, and temporal lobes. Altogether, the cortex is a soft mass of folded nerve tissue. It looks as if your cortex was folded up quickly and stuffed in any old way, but the truth is that every human brain is folded exactly the same way. How neurons inside these folds and ridges connect is what makes each human being singular.